welcome back. My name is Audrey Shantz and I'm a watercolor artist and a watercolor teacher. We are on day 25 of our 30 watercolor tips and tricks, so hopefully you're feeling good. This is a lot of progress. Any of the ones that are hard, go back and do when you're done and try them again. But okay, so this is what we're gonna paint today. It looks like this. It's sort of sweet, happy, and colorful, maybe cheerful. It also should be one that is a little bit more carefree for you. Maybe you can relax a little bit better than something that requires a bigger sketch to it. So this one should be nice today. For supplies, I'm gonna kind of tick through them because you can find them listed below as well. But you need some kind of a towel or paper towel, a jar with some water in it. You need watercolor paints, a pencil, a kneaded eraser. I like to use a round size 10 watercolor brush. I have a 3" by 3" square of cold press watercolor paper. And if you have your printable, we had the 2 printables, you can use that for our tip of the day. And a heat gun if you've got one. And then let's get into, if you want to grab your candle, let's light our candle, make it nice and cozy. I almost skipped having a nice drink with me today, and I was like, nope, because I tell us to make it lovely. So I grabbed this cutie little cat mug and got my peppermint tea, so I'm ready to go as well. Let's read about a variegated wash. So if you want to grab your little booklet, day 25, variegated wash. Variegated washes are when you mix 2 colors in wet on wet. They are less predictable than flat or graded washes, so it's harder to know exactly what the final result will look like. Now, I think I've told you, I don't often think in these terms. So this is me brushing up on the right word for the right thing. Like, I know how to do it, but I don't always know the name. So I had to go, okay, but variegated wash, here was my question. Does it have to be blended together nicely, or is a variegated wash when you bring a whole bunch of colors together and you get the color bleeds between them, you know, where you get, maybe you let it be and you get the cool blooms and markings. And the answer is it doesn't matter. You can do it either way. You can do like assisted blending where you are taking your brush and you're blending the colors together, or you can do where you let the water do the blending. And either way, when you're bringing in multiple colors, 2 colors, at least 2 colors in wet on wet, it's a variegated wash. So that's what we're gonna practice today. And that's what you'll see like in the background. We go from yellow to like a maybe coral color into some maybe darker pink and some lighter. And I just played with changing the colors as we went from top to bottom. It doesn't have to be top to bottom. It's just that there's gonna be a bunch of colors touching each other in this variegated wash, and then we'll play with wet on wet in the actual hearts. So I think it's going to be a fun one. Make sure you're comfy and cozy, and let's get started. Okay, let's get started by observing, and then we're just going to need our pencil and our eraser. So the first thing that we see here is that there's a bunch of hearts, and let's just count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Got 9 different hearts. Some of them are maybe large. We go medium, little smaller, and even smaller. So I can kind of break it into maybe 4 different sizes. So I think that's kind of interesting. And then they are all different colors. Some of them have like more darkness in them. Some of them are pretty light. I would say they at least all have 2 colors in them, which is great. And then this background, so for this one, I went all the way to the edges. You could for sure put a border on this one either by taping or by doing the thing where we just kind of mark the corners and draw it on there. Any of that would be really cute today. I don't think you can go wrong. So I think I'm gonna leave it exactly like this, though those changes sound fun to me. And anytime you're doing art, just think about what sounds fun to you too. So I think that's all we really need for the sketch. I need to adjust this slightly. Okay. And so we'll grab our pencil and our kneaded eraser. And the thing about with our pencil is just to press lightly so we can always erase easily. And I don't want you to overthink this, but I will make one more observation. It's just that we've got a decently equal spacing between things. I mean, some of it's bigger, like here, you know, to here, but none of it's, this is about the tightest we go, is a pencil between them. So when we look at things for balance, one thing that I look at with my eye is I really like the space to be somewhat equal. And notice we didn't get touching the edges. We left a little bit of space on all the sides before we got to the edges as well. So that's probably good enough. And the hearts, I mean, don't worry too much about them. They are not perfect. Look at this one, really skinny on one side, wider. I think it makes it interesting. So things like this, it can be like, oh, I need to make them perfectly symmetrical, but no, you don't. No, you do not. So I'm going to start down here with one of the ones that I think will be bigger. And I'm just going to start, if you think of this like a J, the letter J, a hook, a shepherd's hook, I don't know. But like we all have different ways of doing hearts. So if you've got one that's natural to you, maybe one you've been sketching all along, I say go for it. But honestly, I don't want it overly perfect. So I'm actually going to speed myself up in this versus slowing down so I can get some interesting shapes here. Now this one isn't as big as I maybe wanted it. So I don't know. I don't think I'm going to try to copy the one on the left. And see how this went like that. I'm just going to get in with my eraser and get rid of this part I don't want to see. So, you know, if you're getting mad at yourself about the shape of hearts, I want you to maybe take a breath because it doesn't matter. In fact, look at this. It's like a V. Awesome. I'll make one that's like really wide. Maybe just try to make them all different. That might be a fun way to do it. And somehow we'll just get a bunch of hearts, a bunch of different sizes. I do think I'm going to make that one bigger. I wasn't sure, but I like how the two big ones are like far away from each other. So just get out my eraser. And that's good. Nice and big. And what do I want? Maybe a couple tiny ones here. So always assessing as you go and go like, oh, I could fit one big one. But what if instead I did two tiny ones and maybe I like that? So see what's good for you. I'm going to leave this one. See how it's weird? I'm just leaving it so you can too. Isn't that funny? So when you get to this point, you're looking at it. If your pencil lines got dark anywhere, you might use your kneaded eraser and lighten them up. If there's any of them that you can't stand, now's the time to change them. If any of them go too far to the edges of your paper, you might erase them and bring them in a little. And other than that, we're done. That was a simple sketch today. So we'll move on to mixing our paints, and I'll grab this on here. So if you have this set, you've got 36 colors. If you've got a small set, don't forget that you can do all that color mixing to get colors that you like. So the reminder is that in watercolor, to get your colors lighter, you add water. And if you've got a little spray bottle and you want to spray your paints just so that they're kind of glossy on top, a little watery, and just softens them up, makes them easy to use. And we'll dip our brush into the water first and then pick a color. So if you want to look at this and use it as a reference, great. But I don't think you need to today. I think you can just play. So I've got some colors on here and I'm not going to get rid of them because they give me a good start. Even if I didn't want to use the actual color, like for example, maybe I want to put purple over here next to this brown. And I just had to adjust my water a little bit, but maybe I want this purple. I'm cleaning out my brush here. See this better. And what if I bring a little bit of that brown right into it? Oh, that's a cool color. Maybe I want a little bit more purple, but I can play, and now I've got this cool looking color that I wasn't going to have if I didn't leave these paints here and just practice some mixing. So remember to clean your brush out in between if you want to, you know, get the pure colors, but if you don't want to, you can always see what happens. And what I do want, I like the softness of this. So I do want to get into some of those light blues and light purples. I like how the bright yellow looks. If you think about it, this background is all warm colors, yellow into orange into like a pink. And so I do have a lot of cool colors. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, even 7 have something cool in them. And that's how I like my balance. So you think about what you might like. I stopped talking about taking a screenshot, but if you wanted to with it right here, you can. And then we'll move on and we'll keep mixing some puddles. So I do want light. Remember, when we do this, our hearts themselves, just like any wet on wet, is that we'll start with like a medium color or a light color and load colors into it. So I want this level of just softness right here. Because watercolor is transparent and we work light to dark, that's why that matters. Now, when I'm mixing colors like this and I'm playing with color and I can do anything I want, I like to think, what do I want? And I like to add colors that lean towards neutral sometimes. I don't see a lot of it in here, but I do like to add a little bit of gray or a little bit of a soft tan color or something. Or this one here that's right below the lime green, that's Payne's gray, is like a little navy blue. And I like what happens when I grab that and add some water to it as well, because it's a blue that has some black into it. It really leans neutral. But yeah, play with your paints for a minute, see what you get. Sometimes I end up grabbing the same ones over and over, and I guess I know I want those ones in here. But yeah, this is cute. And so just think, do you want to go through the whole rainbow? Maybe you want to go red, orange, yellow, blue, green, violet. Maybe there's some colors you want to leave out. Maybe you're going to hang this in your kitchen, and your kitchen has every color except for red. Maybe don't add red into this, you know. Although I think I change what I do constantly, so I do like a variety. I like that mustard yellow maybe. Do leave enough space either. Okay, looking at my paint palette, I can either leave space for some bigger puddles for the background, or I can do all the little hearts, which we're gonna do first, and then I can grab one of the puddles and add to it. So since I'm gonna do warm colors on the background, when I get yellow here, I would just add to my yellow later for the bigger wash on the background, or I would add into my orange. So just think ahead, and you know, if you don't plan for it, that's fine. You can just clean off your palette and keep going too. I'm going to show you the color of my water. Isn't that so pretty? It's like mindfulness in art. I just think is such a cool thing. All right, I need some yellows. I'm gonna get some yellow in here, and I'm going to choose that lemon yellow because it's real happy to me, but you pick what you like. Maybe some lime green for that just brightness. And I'm going down now. Okay, I've got pink, orange, yellow. So I'm going through the rainbow. Green, blue, purple. And then I'll just look for what's missing. And remember, we can start with our puddles when we start painting, but we'll also take from our paints. So you're definitely not limited to the colors you put out here right now. Yeah, I like that earthy green, so I'll use the fifth one up from the bottom right, which is a green. It's kind of a yellow green, maybe mixed with a little bit of brown even, and that's a nice color too. I don't know what else I want to see. I think I'm good, because anything that I still want to see when we look at this again, you know, you can see like maybe I started with this color and I touched in some purple paint from my paints to get this other one. So I feel like I'm good to go. You make sure you are too. Pause me if you need to. You got a pause button when we're recording, so that's awesome. And yeah, for here, I'm gonna move my paints out of the way, start to get these lined up so that we can see, and we'll get into it. So we're gonna start with the hearts, only doing hearts. We'll fully dry all of the hearts before we do the background, because in watercolor, if you work next to something that's wet, your colors will bleed. And in this case, we want that to happen in the hearts and outside of the hearts, but not from the hearts to the outside, right? Okay, so this is where we'll play. You may want to just watch one of them, or you can just listen and work alongside me. I'm going to first grab one of these pink colors, and remember, you can refresh your puddles as needed. And if you look at your paints right now and they are not glossy like this, I want you to spray them and get them a little bit wet. Okay, so I'm going to get in here with my pink, and I have a light to medium color, and I am filling this whole thing in. Now that was from my puddle. I'm touching my brush to my towel, and I'll grab something else from a puddle first, because I don't mind some nice soft blends right here, okay? But then if I want a darker color, I want to go to my paints, not my puddle. So I'll take this brush, clean it in my jar, wipe it on my towel, and I'm going to go into a dark color from my palette and see the difference now. I have much less water, and I went right into the paint, so it's going to be a more concentrated color. I want to make sure I get to the edge of that heart. Okay, and then I'm gonna leave it be. You could blend your colors yourself or let the water do it. It doesn't matter. And that's gonna be the same when we get into that background too. There you go. It wasn't quite to the edge, so I just fixed it. And now what's so cool about this one is none of these hearts are touching. And so as long as we don't accidentally touch a wet one with our finger, we can just go through and do the same thing for all of them. Remember that we are limiting our water, so on the first one it's going to have the most water, but when you get into these tiny hearts, you definitely aren't going to need very much paint in the first place for it to cover and remain wet. So this is going to be good for water control. Tiny hearts are going to need less, and maybe when it's this small, I did that from my puddle and I went into my lime green paint and just touched it from my paint. And if you can get up close, you can see it does have two colors. That's all I need. If you wanted to get like, I can't see the colors that well, you can get into a darker color. We're always going light to dark. And now I have a little bit more variation, although be careful that your darker colors don't take over your lighter colors. And you do that by really being careful with how much water you use on that second color. So now I'm going to go through and like this, if you aren't feeling comfortable in your chair, I want you to relax a little bit. Maybe pull your seat up behind you in a way that feels more comfortable, because this is the kind where you can play and experiment and just see what happens. There's no rules to it. There's nothing we need to see. It's a whole bunch of different colors, and I think it's going to turn out great. So always that light color first. If anyone wanted to, I'm not going to, all right, I said I wasn't going to do it, but watch, I will do it. If anyone wants to do water first, look at this. I'm going to paint this whole heart with water first. This is a little bonus one too. And I want to make sure, so what I'm doing when I keep touching it is taking a little bit of the water out, because I want it to be reflective like this without puddling or pooling. And now from here, I can take colors and add them in, and the water is going to pull it just as if it was a light colored paint. You can tell mine's a little bit dry, and that's okay. But what you get is these soft bleeds and no hard edges because you put that water in there first. So that's a way to do it if you feel like you might have a better time with it or like enjoy it more because you don't have to start with that other color. Like sometimes people just like it better this way. I did a lot of private lessons, and when I would do my first lesson, we often did strawberries where it starts with water first. And I think it makes it less intimidating because you've already put something on there, but it's clear. So, you know, if you start with a really dark paint, that's intimidating, but water is not. I like this one. That's cool. It's got a bunch of colors in there. A tiny bit more. And then I'm going to move on. So tiny adjustments for this. You know, your bottom layer has to be reflective, like it has to be shiny in order for you to know that it's wet enough to blend whatever comes into it. I don't know why, but I think it's just interesting to think of this as a study of water. I don't know why that changes it in my brain, but it's like, it does. It just becomes less about painting and more about observing, I think. So let's see, I need some purple. We're all just kind of working around. I'll be curious who chose to do water on them first and who chose to do a light color paint. So whenever it's puddling or pooling, grab that excess up. Or, I mean, you can see what happens if you don't. Like we said, it is about experimenting. So even though this one's so tiny, I want to see a couple colors in there. So in order to do so, I really am limiting my water when I get in there, adding the colors in. But it is fun to see what you can do in these tiny spaces. I think 2 colors is interesting. It's absolutely all we need. But I do think that the more colors you get in there, kind of the more interesting it gets. And it's just cool to see what happens when those colors bleed together. Ooh, love it. And this is also a fun way to play with the colors on your palette and learn what they are. Is just grab one that you haven't used, or you haven't used in a long time, or you can't remember what it is. because when we're playing with so many colors, it just doesn't matter. And every time I do this, I'm just looking for what color would balance it a little bit for me. Like, okay, I want a little bit more yellow, so I'm going to do yellow up here. And if I did all really light colors or yellows at the top, and then I'm doing a yellow background, they won't stick out as much. So I'm kind of considering that, but I mean, not that much. I'm not worried if they stick out or not. It's just something that we will notice when we get there. So clearly it would be some real cute Valentine's cards. I don't know if anybody's already working on Christmas stuff, but I know a lot of people who are creatives get ahead of the season, and it's just so then if that was the case, then pretty soon you're going to start on Valentine's Day. All right, maybe I'm a little being aggressive about that, but it's wild how fast it will be here. Sorry to scare any of you. It's not that close to Valentine's Day. Cute. Isn't it fun to just appreciate your own work? You know, you don't have to wait for somebody else to compliment it. You can see these colors coming together and be like, look what I did. So I think mine are good. I don't want to make any changes. But let's say I wanted to. If I went into this heart, because I'm like, well, it only has 2 colors, I should add. You know, you can do that. But every time you add to it, you kind of have to know what's going to happen when you do. So I would rather leave it and get that really lovely, like this portion is a lovely flat wash, and around the edges I can see some cauliflowering or blooming. And I think that's beautiful, so I'm going to leave it. And I'm going to take it to the dryer now, get all of this totally dry. I will know it's dry when I don't see the light reflecting on anything, and then we will mix up our colors for our washes. Sometimes I'd like to keep exactly with what we did on the first one, but also it's fun to see what else we can do. So what if you can follow this and do a puddle of yellow, a puddle of orange, and I think that would be maybe this first dark one plus water, and then a puddle of pink. But also, what if you switched it up? What if you had some of this like a teal color? I like mixing on this palette. So on any palette, it might be blue and green. And on this one, I like the 4th one down from that top center, and the 4th one up from the bottom right. And I just like what happens when I mix those two together. So what if I wanted that? Also notice I'm going to clean this puddle off without paper towel. I just have a brush that I cleaned and I dried, and I'm just going to go like this and clean my brush. So you can do that sometimes too to get colors out of there that you don't want. And now I've got space for all of this, and I can add some water and maybe clean my brush out and add some water again, and it's nice and light, and I love that. So I'm going to use that for one of my colors. Maybe put colors next to each other that you know what colors they create, but I'm not worried about that either. I'm going to use this lime green down here, and I'll use yellow. So just to show us some variety. And I personally want the colors to be sort of soft, so I'm adding a good amount of water. But if you wanted boldness, you would just add more paint into your puddle, and your puddle can be the same size as it was going to be. Make sense? Cool, I love this. And I feel good about it. If you have white on your palette, you can always grab some white and mix it into whatever color you're working with and see what happens. It's up to you. I don't think it made much of a difference, so I don't tend to use it, but sometimes it's fun. Get a nice creamy color. So from here, I'm going to move my paints out of the way again, and this is going to be similar to which days? Okay, I don't have it in front of me right now, but it's going to be similar to when we have done a flat wash and we've just worked around spaces. And by now we've done a lot of them. But with the flat wash, you're worrying about it all drying at the same time. You're worried about, you know, having it be nice and even. But this has varied colors in it. So all I really want us to think about is working top to bottom. We'll get one color in. We'll clean our brush and dry it. Touch the bottom and keep moving. So I will grab, so now I'm looking, okay, I've got like blues and purples up here. So maybe I start with green because I don't see a lot of green. And that's how I'm choosing. And maybe have half of your brush into your paint. I'm going to darken mine a little so you can see it. But if you had a full brush, it's tricky to get in like your details around the hearts. I'm adding a little bit more so you can see it better on camera. And then remember to go light on the tip of your brush and maybe hold your brush more vertically when you're getting into those tight spaces. If you leave white space between your background color and your hearts, just know that you're going to see it later, and that's fine. But I like to get up kind of close to them. And once I get about here, I don't even care that I finished this line. Maybe right here, I clean my brush and I wipe it on the towel and I grab another color, and I think I'm going to get into the yellow here. What I'm going to do is take my wet brush, it's got paint on it, and touch this one and keep it moving. I'm going to touch it all along that bottom part, and I'm adding some color so you can see the difference a little bit more. And I'm going to touch what is wet, remember, because we want a soft transition there, and if I didn't let it touch, I would either see white space or a hard line. And I'm going to pull this down, and this is one again where we say it's kind of like moving a puddle around. Look at this little heart's going to get kind of lost in the mix, but I think it's real cute that way. Sometimes you don't realize it, but that pencil that we have on there in the beginning is really helping us. Okay, what I notice right now is I cannot tell the difference between these two. So I'm getting in here with green on my brush, and while it is wet, I'm just going to quickly load in some green because I lost it, right? The colors were too similar, and I don't see a difference. So while it's wet, I just did that. Now I wouldn't have done my example that way, but because that happened, I wanted to show it to you. And I'm making my blue my green a little bit darker too, because I notice on camera you can't see it otherwise. But what I have to do is I have to grab it right here and let the wet paint touch the wet paint before I pull it down. And I have too much water, so I touched my brush to my towel. And now I'm just moving it around. I'm going to touch this before it dries, and I can blend these colors together or not. So I'm going to look at it in 1 second and decide if I like how it looks, and I'll decide if I want to blend them together with what is called an assisted blend. I learned that when I was researching for this video, because remember, I don't always use these terms, and you don't have to either. Okay. Oh, I don't know. I really like that look. Okay, so I'm going to not assist it, and here's why. Look at that transition between the yellow and this sort of teal color on the bottom. It's so cool, and the one above it is as well. So I'm going to compare it to the one next to it. I think the one on the left, I maybe did assist it and blended it a little bit with my brush, or it was just wet and it kind of worked out that way. But this one, I think what happened is this one started to dry more, and I came in with more water on the bottom. And those are things that, yes, we have some control over, but also we don't have to worry about. It's just going to look different, you know, and I like that. We look at things at the store when you go shopping, these cute little boutiques, and you see things that have these color bleeds, and we like them. So keep that in mind. Okay, I love this. I'm going to give it a quick dry, and then I think on one of them I'm going to do ink, just because I know some of you are going to want to anyways, and we can see what it looks like. Also, I want you to know that, you know, if you can do this, you can make cards. You could sell this to Trader Joe's, like in the shape of a card. You know, it's beautiful, right? And it's sort of letting watercolor shine. Okay, I'm going to grab the Ultra Fine Point Sharpie. Looks like this. That's just the one that I really like. And I'm trying to decide which one I want to do the ink over. I think I'm going to do it on this one because I really like the softness of that one, and I want to keep it that way. But this one already has bolder color, so I'm just going to go for it. And we'll see what we think. Now you can clean up your lines, or you can go exactly over your pencil. Notice this is not perfect. I left white space, but I like my shape of my heart. So you decide how you want to do this. If any of your hearts look wonky and you're like, ugh, it's a little bit crooked or something, this is where you can clean it up. And this is where anybody struggles with perfection will like this part because you have control. I think we all kind of struggle with perfection when we're trying to figure out what is good art. But I will tell you, it's not the perfect stuff. Perfect isn't what we're looking for. Unless, like, you know what I mean? We all have our own eye. We all have our own perspective. But I think this one being like this shape It makes it interesting. It gives me something to look at. Okay, I like it. I'm gonna go ahead and sign the bottom. Make sure you sign your artwork. And if you're doing art, you're an artist. All you have to do is be doing art. You know what I'm saying? So way to go, you guys. This was day number 25. I will see you again for day 26.